Oh, we've got the whole span from Montreal to Dallas, London, Albany, New York. Really great to see everybody. If you're just dialing in, we'll get started in a couple more minutes. Jean, if you could share your screen with that first slide, that would be great whenever you're ready. Oh, Boca Raton. I spent Christmas in Boca Raton with a high school friend one time. I've only been once, but it was a really lovely spot. Awesome. Thank you very much. So just some quick housekeeping as we get set up here. If you are dialed in as anonymous, I encourage you to go in and change your name. Anonymous is our most frequent flying webinar attendee who shows up every single time, but we like it way better when we can see your name. And it also helps you connect to your peers. We are using the webinar format of Zoom. So you'll see that there's two places that you can enter your info or kind of talk with the rest of the group. There's the chat, and then there's also the question. So chat is a really great place for you to kind of have a conversation with us, but also with your fellows that are on this call alongside you. So I really do encourage you to kind of share some back channel or ask questions of one another as we're kind of going through. Of course, I will also be keeping an eye on all of your comments and ideas and questions in there. And we'll make sure that John sees them and that you'll have an opportunity to ask those. So we are going to ask you to participate in some kind of polls and some prompts for you. So definitely get ready to do that. And what we're doing right now is just sharing where everybody's from in the chat. I see Worcester. I grew up in Massachusetts, so nice to see a fellow Mass person. Let's see who else. Athens, all the way from Athens, Greece. Fantastic. Ontario, New Jersey, tons of folks. Always a total blast. We've got SoCal, we've got Germany. Always a really good time to see such an international and wide-ranging group. So with that, I am going to go ahead and kick us off here. Wash DC in the house. Hi, Joy. Really nice to see you. I see a bunch of familiar and friendly faces here, a bunch of PAC members on the call. So welcome, everybody, and hello to the new faces. If you could pop me to the next slide, that would be great. So I am here talking to all of you because I am Georgina Donahue, and I'm the director of the Pragmatic Alumni Community through Pragmatic. So this is really a place where we bring all Pragmatic alumni together to really have a really rich and robust interaction between you and your peers, really thinking about, hey, I know what the best practices are, but I'd really love to dig deep with someone about how you specifically implemented them in your organization. Or, hey, could I get a list of screenshots of how other people have put together their personas, or whatever question your peers and fellow alum are talking about that day. That's really what we do in the Pragmatic Alumni Community. We also have absolutely brilliant members, which means that we're able to bring you conversations like this one. And so Jean is a PAC member. We're delighted to have him hang out with us in there. So we're going to have a really interesting conversation today. If you can pop me to the next slide. Wonderful. So as I mentioned, I'm delighted to be joined by a PAC member. So Jean-Sébastien Tassé is the Director of Products and Innovation at XRM Vision. And so Jean-Sébastien is an engineer at heart with over 15 years of experience across a huge range of disciplines: product management, marketing, sales, and he's got this really awesome, innovative view of the landscape because he's worked across telecom and AI and manufacturing and nanotechnologies and more, right? So worked, kind of has his hands in all sorts of different interesting challenges that he has worked to untangle over his many years of experience. So I'm really excited for him to talk to all of you today about developing an effective, B2B marketing strategy. So Jean-Sébastien was working with a really highly technical product, and his potential users and buyers, often they weren't even sure what the problem that the product solved was. So what he did is, really focused on education. And he's going to give us a deep dive into the marketing campaign that he used to educate his customers first before even diving into the product's value. So I don't want to say too much because it's so much better coming from him. So with that, Jean-Sébastien, I turn it over to you, and we're delighted to talk to you today.
Thank you, Georgina, for the great introduction. So hi, everyone. Thanks for being there today. So I think we'll have a great discussion, and I look forward to all of your questions. So to introduce a bit the topic of B2B marketing complexity, well, I just want to highlight a couple of points. And B2B marketing can be relatively complex for a number of reasons. First, because oftentimes multiple decision makers or influencers are involved in the decision. So there could be somebody looking at it from the technical angle. Then there could be somebody from the purchasing department who's looking at it from another angle. You might have somebody from IT if you're selling a software taking a look. So it's not uncommon to have buying committees of 3, 4, 5, 10 people. Obviously, that multiplies the number of touch points. So that means the number of interactions between your company, your potential customer, and you. So when we're talking touch point, it could be conversation with salespeople. It could be website visits, attending a demo. All of those are what we refer to as touch points. And since there are so many people involved and so many touch points, well, the buyer journey becomes extremely difficult to map because each of these people goes through a number of, and we'll talk about it later on. So it becomes difficult to see what's going on and to basically influence your potential buyer. All of that leads to a much longer sales cycle in B2B marketing versus B2C, where oftentimes, the buyer and the user might be the same person and the buying cycle can be a lot shorter. So sales cycle can last several months. I've been in a company where a sales cycle lasted for years. So it's extremely long. And considering all of that, if your product is highly technical on top of it, well, all of those are multiplied by several factors. So it increases the complexity. So I'd like to go to a poll to ask you what are your top challenges in B2B marketing. You can choose multiple answers. So I sort of tried to address or mention some of the key challenges I'm hearing. The first one is sales and marketing alignment. I've mentioned this one because it's pretty hot topic in marketing circles, because it used to be before digital marketing that, marketing was nurturing some leads and then those were passed on to sale. And then, marketing didn't hear about them anymore, but now it's a lot of activities in parallel that both sales and marketing address. So that's why sales and marketing alignment is so important. Second one, technology integration. It's no surprise that there are lots of marketing tools out there for SEO, SEM, social media. So integrating all of those, that tech stack can become a challenge. So is that a challenge that you're facing? Number 3C is proving the return on investment or revenue attribution of marketing activities. So in the past, people in marketing focused a lot on the activities and not so much about the payback of them. And obviously, upper management, wants to invest their money wisely. So, if you can prove the impact of your activities, it's even better. Then creating impactful content, that's also a key point, because lots of people have embraced inbound marketing and creating contents that stands out, that gets referenced by SEO is extremely challenging, because there's so much volume of content and noise. And finally, understanding your customer journey is also a challenge. So cast your vote, and we'll take a look at what people have chosen.
So still some answers coming in. Looks like a little bit more than 60% of people have cast theirs. So add yours here. But looks like number one is really proving ROI, as well as attribution, followed up closely by creating impactful content. Is where we're at. A little bit of understanding the customer journey is up there too. That's another challenge, but definitely it looks like the runaway winner is proving ROI. Yeah.
Yeah, and given the topic of today's discussion, I'm not so surprised, but it seems also in the audience we have technical experts, because nobody is facing issues with the technical software, the software used in marketing. So we have a lot of experts today in the audience, so that's good. That's good to know. Okay, so I think the discussion today will be very interesting, because we'll be talking about the ROI definitely. So moving on, are you the one closing the poll, or? Okay. I want to briefly introduce here the Pragmatic Institute framework, because this is obviously a Pragmatic Institute webinar, but I think it's relevant because I'll be referring to it, because lots of the activities I've used to do this marketing campaign, I go back to the Pragmatic framework. So the Pragmatic framework is basically a model that tells you, as a product manager or product marketer, all the activities that you should do to make your product successful. So it starts from, I'm not going to go into all the details, because you could spend days on it, but it starts from the left hand side, where the activities are a bit more strategic, all the way to the right hand side, where all the activities are a bit more tactical, and from the top, where it's a bit more business oriented, while at the bottom it's a bit more technical. And what's the most important in all of that, what drives basically everything else, is market problems. So understanding what problems your customers are facing to make sure you can answer them. So, to set the stage for the marketing campaign, let me tell you a little bit about the context in which I was working at the time. I was working for Expo, which is a company specializing in instrumentation or test equipment for telecom providers. So potential customers were large companies like Bell Canada, or Verizon, or AT&T in the US, or British Telecom in the UK. So Expo manufactures little devices like the one you see on the picture here. Those blue boxes testing fiber optic network. So at the time, I was product line manager of a highly technical product, which was very successful in Europe, but not so much in the US. And the historical explanation was that we had a lower market share in the USA versus Europe. Just want to mention also how I've structured my discussion today. So I'll be giving you lots of tips throughout my presentation, and to illustrate a bit how those tips can be applied, I'll use my case study basically for that purpose. So then we go for tip number one. Well, challenge any preconceived ideas through market research. So as I mentioned, the historical explanation was that that product had a smaller market share in the US, but it didn't seem to make a lot of sense because we were a Canadian company, so very close to the US, so geographical proximity played in our favor versus Europe, which is overseas and a lot further away. Also, all the other products in the Expo portfolio performed pretty well in the USA. So there was no reason really why my product wouldn't perform well in the US as well. So what I used is an activity called win-loss analysis that Pragmatic favors a lot, and it's definitely been a key tool I've used throughout my career to for road mapping purposes, but also to understand what really goes on in our customers' mind. And win-loss analysis, for those of you who are not familiar with it, consists in reaching out to customers who have made a decision regarding your product, so to buy it or not to buy it after the decision has been made, and to basically ask them, about their feedback. So it's an interview, 15 to 30 minutes typically, where you ask them, what did you perceive of our product? What did you like about it? What you didn't like? Did you consider any competitors? How can we make our offering more appealing? These types of questions, open-ended questions that give you a lot of valuable information. And basically what I uncovered there is that we were not losing against a specific competitor in the US. It's just that potential buyers just decided not to buy anything. So it was really the status quo. So in terms of activities, I've used, win-loss analysis and also product portfolio to see how my product performed versus other products. So this table here summarizes a bit what I found out talking to our internal sales force, but also to potential customers. So in Europe, we had a good sales volume, while in the US, it was pretty low. The perceived value in Europe, people consistently told me, we see value in the types of equipment you're offering. This is good for us, and it can solve problems for us. In the US, I got a mixed bag. Some people saw value in it, but also some people told me, yes, we sort of see what your product could do, but we're not sure, and is it worth the investment? So, the value was unknown for some of them. Also, two major differences between Europe and the USA at the time was that the telecom operators, or our target customers, provided a lot of training for our potential customers in Europe, while in the US, training was a lot lower. So that meant that the people we wanted to sell our product to had a lot more technical background. So some of them had engineering degrees or physics or etc. But other ones were highly trained because of their employer. While in the US, unfortunately, at the time, there wasn't so much technical training. And on top of it, my product was highly technical. So this proved to be a challenge. So the conclusion of all that was that the market size, not the market share, was smaller in the USA than Europe. And it's a whole different strategy there because, in the end, we have a good product, but in the USA, people did not perceive enough value for it. So what our challenge was growing that market rather than beating competitor X or Y in the USA. So here, in terms of what tools I've used is understanding your buyer persona. So what's the reality? In this case, the key finding was that they had less training in the USA than Europe, and also understanding market problems. What problem your product resolves. So the strategy became clear. It was educating our customer, and I don't mean educating in the, let's say, the bad sense or the arrogant sense of it, but really more about helping customers figure out ways that they could resolve their problems using your product. So this brings me to tip number 2. The marketing for technical product should focus more on education. And here I'm showing the AIDA model. So, the first letters of each of these stages in the sales funnel. So awareness, interest, decision, and action. Awareness is the stage where you're getting yourself familiar with the type of problems you have, researching if there are solutions that exist or not. Interest, there you start comparing potential competitors and potential products, which one would be a better fit for my situation. And then you reach a decision and finally take action. So this model is obviously oversimplified because nowadays we talk more about a flywheel and different other models, but it's good to, for illustration purposes, to convey the point I want to make. So I'll just give two extreme examples. If you want to buy shoes, for instance, you're probably not going to spend a whole lot of time in the awareness stage because you pretty much already know what shoes are for. You know, it's more a decision of do I need shoes or not, or do I need this brand or this brand. So you'll move pretty quickly to interest. At the other extreme, if I come to you with a teleportation device, you will probably be asking a whole lot of questions because, well, first, you've never seen a teleportation device, and you might be wondering, you know, is it safe? Is there a risk I might end up in Antarctica with your teleportation device? You know, can I lose an arm if I use it? So you'll be asking a lot of questions because intrinsically, a teleportation device is a lot more technical than a shoe. So that's what I want to convey here, that if your product is more technical, well, people spend more time in the awareness stage. So that means educating them more around, you know, the problems that they have and how your solution can help them. So here in terms of activity, we're talking about, well, raising awareness of the pragmatic framework, and also your buyer experience. So how do they go through each of those stages towards up to making a decision in the end. So what we decided more concretely to organize was full-day seminars. We thought it was the best way to maximize the short-term impact of our marketing strategy. So we could have used different other approaches, you know, email marketing or creating white papers, etc. But we thought that the impact of it wouldn't be as strong as having a full-day seminar. So this is what we chose as a strategy. And then I'll dig a bit deeper into what we actually did. Then my tip number 3 is focus on the application, not your product. So if you call your event seminars or, you know, whatever type of event, it's probably best not to call it product X seminars. You should talk, you should, you know, frame it as application Y seminars. So if you're selling, I don't know, CRM software, for instance, I would not recommend to call your event CRM seminars. You should probably call it sales or marketing effectiveness seminars, because this is what really people want to improve. So, you know, make sure you focus it in terms of the benefit that customers will get from attending your event. So to make it more lively, we added diversity of speakers, so 2 or 3 speakers. And these events consisted of a full-day in-person event held in hotels. We offered free lunch for the event. It might have helped attract more people, but we'll see in the end that it definitely helped with the payback. And the way the event was structured was, you know, in the morning we focused on the application. So, you know, there was a lot of physics behind it, but this could apply to pretty much anything. So we focused on explaining all of the concept, how light travels in the fiber optics and all of that, without almost not mentioning the products at all during the morning. So really foundational concept. And then in the afternoon, we focus more on case studies. So how, you know, the type of issues that our target customers, telecom operators were facing, and how our product could help. So we really approached it from the customer's shoes, the customer perspective. So here, what we have in terms of the pragmatic framework, it's talking about positioning, so how your product relates to the problems, and also the type of content that appeals to your audience. In our case, it was educational, more scientific content, and that's what we approach. You might say that, you know, nowadays we're in the pandemic, so having an in-person event is not possible. And true, you know, in most countries nowadays, it's, well, for at least a couple of months, it's not possible, but, you know, light is coming at the end of the tunnel. Probably in fall in lots of the Western world countries, you know, in-person events might be available. And, but also the strategy could be transposed to virtual events. You know, one thing we've done for Latin America in that same job is we held the events in Spanish because, there were so many locations that it was impossible to cover it. So we had a series of webinars where we announced that we would cover, lots of things about the application from, so all of those were announced in advance. So seminar 1 and seminar 2 the next week and seminar 3 the next week. So all of those concepts could be transposed virtually if you prefer this approach. Then tip number 4 is pitch a marketing initiative as a pilot project if required. And this is something that works well for lots of marketing projects. So it could be if it's a new idea that you might experience pushback to secure approval or budget for your event. In my case, I was lucky enough that my superiors saw a lot of value in it and wanted to try it out. But if you have a bit of pushback, well, first say that it's a pilot project. So the results of the first event will determine if the initiative will be repeated or not. So you'll know pretty quickly, if there's good attendance or not, but over a couple of months, you'll see if it generates qualified leads, if you keep in touch with your sales team. So you should be able to figure out if it's worth your time or not. And also stressing that you will measure the return on investment makes a lot of sense because executives are generally speaking open-minded, but they just want to make sure that their money is well spent. So if you can demonstrate this, some return on investment of your marketing activities, this will definitely, help you increase your credibility. So here we're talking about stakeholder communication, so internal alignment to make sure everybody is on the same page. Good. I think we had planned for Q&A. Is this the right time or?
Yeah, I think so. And I do have some questions for you that have come in. The first one, I think that you'll probably talk a little bit more about, but for now, how can you reach out to the right personas from the base, right? How do you reach out to your potential customers to come to these?
Yeah, so, well, in our case, we had a relatively extensive database of potential customers, so that did help. But, there's lots of ways to promote this. So you could use specialized media. So in pretty much every industry, there are, publication or online magazines that target potential buyers for it. So you could advertise your event there or use your internal database. LinkedIn is becoming extremely powerful these days, so it's possible to target people based on their field of activity. So that might be also one way to use it to promote your event. But there's a lot of ways.
Awesome, thank you. There's another question as well. What speakers participated in these events? What speakers participated in the events?
So the events, well, the speakers were people from Expo, so our company. However, I've already used an event external speakers, and oftentimes if you can get somebody who's has a good reputation, it definitely helps. So I would recommend if your company is well established, having internal speakers is probably sufficient. But if you're more of a startup and people don't know your company that much, having external speakers, experts in your industry is definitely valuable.
Yeah, I agree. Kind of building that credibility and kind of thought leadership of the space. That's really smart. We do have one other question that I will mention to you, but I think we'll hold off on. Linda is curious about how you measured your ROI and if you used software and what you used in particular, but I think that you're going to talk about that a little bit later on. So I'll put it in your brain, but we can circle back to it for Linda afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, we will talk about it in a few slides, actually. Okay, so moving on. So the first event was held in Baltimore, in Maryland. We expected about 60 people, and finally over 130 people registered. So it was, already pretty good result. And people were supposed to sign up, but some people didn't and just showed up at the event on the day where it was happening. So we obviously didn't want to, refuse them. So they had to stand at the back of the room because the room was full. So they still attended the event. Some of them not for the whole day because it's not super comfortable standing at the back of the room, but still it showed that, there was really something going on. So we were, obviously pleasantly surprised by those results. And how were we able to have such a good turnout? Well, one of the keys, I think, is partnering with your sales team for event promotion. So yes, we use the typical marketing channels I've mentioned earlier. But first, if your product is not very local, if it sells in big regions, in our case, we had potential customers all throughout the US and Canada and other countries. But in the US, we basically asked the sales team to choose the location because they knew which location would be more strategic, where we could attract more people. In our case, we knew that people would not fly to attend this event, so they would be driving. So we were thinking, maximum 1-2 hours of driving is probably the most people will do to attend our event. And so having sales team chose the location definitely helped attract more people. Also, we had close alignment with them. So we had weekly meetings between sales, event marketing, and product management to see, well, first, how promotion was going, how many people were signing up, if there were additional activities or things we should be doing. And we also had the sales team send personal invitation to key prospects, so sort of VIP invitation, especially to hire people like VPs, etc. Because if they could convince that people, like the VP to attend, well, most likely lots of the people, like let's say the director or manager level, would also attend. So here in terms of activities, we use, well, sales alignment, and it definitely helped. Then, obviously, we started receiving calls of people who were really interested in our event. So that we had a relatively big sales team in the US. So all of the salespeople wanted to hold such event in their territory. So we held those events in all the cities you see in the black dots here. So Dallas, Denver, Columbus, Ohio, LA, etc. In New Jersey, which was our best location, more precisely in Edison, we had to hold 3 events over the course of a year with over 100 attendees each time because there was so much demand. So the first 2 events were sold out, and then we had to hold a 3rd event. Now we get to the question that was asked earlier. So how do you measure the return on investment of your marketing campaign? Well, what I've used is a method I would say is somewhat manual, but it's probably the method that is the most effective to track, really what goes on, what comes out of those events. So the way I've proceeded is I tracked in the CRM that we have, so our customer relationship management system, every sales opportunity associated to the attendees companies. So we had a number of people showing up, but oftentimes if you're selling to, in B2B marketing, some person might attend your seminar, but the person requesting the quote might be a buyer or a colleague or a manager. So if you're only tracking the people who attended your event, well, you'll be missing out on the impact of your event. So I tracked, what was going on in terms of sales opportunity for all the companies that attended our event. And so when I saw that we won one of those opportunities, I asked the salespeople, well, did the seminar have an important influence on the purchase or not? So that way, I was able to directly connect revenues to the seminars. So here we're talking about sales alignment, measuring also the impact of your activities. Just one word. Well, I'll go back to different methods to measure ROI. But obviously this approach of reaching out to your sales team makes more sense when you're spending more money and it's bigger events, so like trade shows, in-person events. It's less applicable for, I would say, smaller activities like email marketing or things like this. But you'll see that there are other methods that can work for other marketing activities. So the final results, well, we held similar events in Spain and France as well. So generally speaking, this product was successful in Europe, but Spain and France were a bit lagging behind, let's say, Germany and other countries in Europe. So we decided to tackle those as well. So in the end, it influenced $1.3 million in sales, over 720 attendees all around. And the ROI, as measured by sales over even budget, was 21, which is, I think, a pretty good result. So this is what I'm mentioning. This is what I was mentioning earlier, measuring the ROI of different types of events. So in our case, the events cost between $10,000 to $15,000, depending on the number of people we had. Obviously, most of the cost was, the food. Obviously, there was the renting out the hotel rooms and, projector, etc. But, with $100 to $150 per person, it was, roughly what we had to spend for our events. So the method I've used of asking the sales team, did the seminar have an impact on closing this sale? Works well for in-person events, but if you're sending, I don't know, several a weekly newsletter, or if you have you're using a lot email marketing, it's a lot harder to make this connection by asking the salesperson. But for this, there are tools called revenue or marketing attribution, which help you identify the key touch point in the customer journey that led to a purchase. So it's not something I've used, but I thought it was relevant for today's discussion. So I'll spend a bit of time on how those models work. So revenue or marketing attribution models are available from most CRMs. So I can mention a couple. There's one called Click Dimension, which is a marketing automation tool that's connected to Microsoft Dynamics. Salesforce has it, HubSpot, and probably lots of other CRMs offer this, so it's relatively widely available. So how does that work? Well, between the purchase, let's say the initial contact, and the purchase at the end, there are multiple touch points. So a touch point can be, conversation with sales, a demo, attending an event, visiting your website, all of that. So if you use a first interaction model, well, it means that the first touch point gets all the credit for the sale. So if the sale is $10,000, if you use that first interaction model, well, the first touch point is credited with all of the $10,000. So if your first interaction is like sales engine optimization, so website visit, then SEO would get all the credit for that sale. You can also use the last interaction, so the last touch point gets all the credit for the sale, which is another approach. A linear approach, which is probably a bit more representative of what actually goes on, means that all touch points are given equal credit for the sale. So if there are 5 touch points, again, we're selling $10,000. Every touch point would be credited for $2,000 of value. And so then you can start comparing, how is SEO working out versus webinars versus website visits or whatever. And then there's other fancier models like U-shaped, W-shaped, etc. that can help. So all of those are pretty useful for what I would say more like digital marketing type of activities. But there are some limitations in B2B. So what if the purchase order is placed by a different person from the initial contact? So we've mentioned at the very beginning that oftentimes in B2B, there's purchasing committees, technical advisors, buyers, lots of people are involved. So with these types of models, it's relatively difficult to track what touch points led to a sale. What if the purchase order is placed by a different company? So if you're selling overseas, oftentimes there could be a distributor or an agent in between. And so you will only have a partial view of all the touch points that happen. Also, bigger companies like multinationals, some of them completely outsource their purchase to another company. So they never themselves purchase. It always comes from other people. So making that connection becomes difficult with these types of tools. So in the end, what will yield the best result is asking directly your sales team. It is more tedious, it takes more time, but it's definitely what will yield the most reliable result. And in many companies, salespeople have a big say in the success of the company. So if you're able to get them aligned with what you want to achieve, usually you'll get pretty strong support, and it will help you get more funding for whatever marketing activities you're pursuing. My tip number 7 is a holistic approach to marketing yields better result. And what do I mean by that? It's because I've highlighted all the activities that we've achieved. So we didn't only focus on holding an event or building content. It starts from an understanding of your customer reality and what goes on in their, putting yourself in their shoes. So if I go quickly over the pragmatic framework, well, I've highlighted in green some of the key activities that we've used. So market problem, like understanding that in our case in the US, people did not receive a lot of training versus Europe. Win-loss analysis to understand that we were not losing against the competitor, but we were losing against the status quo. Product portfolio, so comparing the performance of my product versus other products sold by the same company. The buyer experience, so understanding that my product was very technical, so that meant we had to spend more time in the awareness stage, educating more the customer. Buyer persona, understanding that some people had were highly technical, others less, so that meant we had to spend more time educating them. Stakeholder communication to get internal alignment, those pilot projects I talked about. Measuring the ROI, I think it's one of the key things that stood out and that attracted the attention of my colleagues internally, was that measuring the ROI was not something that people were doing. So connecting revenues with marketing activities. Many companies will track things like cost per lead or number of website visitors or numbers of attendees at a webinar, and those are great, but it's just one part of the equation. If you can connect your marketing to actual sales result, it makes it a lot stronger. And then sales alignment, building good content for your audience, and obviously holding events. So I'll just wrap things up now. So the takeaways. So first, challenge preconceived ideas through market research. In my case, we believe that we had a smaller market share in the US, while in fact it's just the market size was smaller. So it's a totally different strategy, and we found that through win-loss analysis and market research. Number 2, marketing for technical products should focus more on education. I think I've mentioned it several times. Focusing on the application is also key, not your product. So starting from your customer's reality and then weaving in your product that yields better result. Pitch your marketing initiative as a pilot project if required. It helps securing funding and getting better, because you're asking for a smaller budget. That might scale if you're successful, but at least it's you position your event as an experiment. Then partner with sales for event promotion. That's key. So have them choose a location if it's an in-person event. Have them send out personalized invitations. Try to measure the return on investment of your marketing campaign. This will definitely boost your credibility. And finally, holistic approach to marketing yields better results. So one thing I didn't mention in the previous slide is you probably don't have to check all of those boxes for every single marketing activity. But if you never update your buyer persona, or if you don't have a buyer persona, that can be an issue. So, doing it, you might do it once a year. It's probably enough. Then you have it and you keep it and you use it for your marketing activities. But, doing these types of activities that are a bit more strategic, like market problems and win-loss analysis, definitely pays off, because then if you understand better what goes on in your customer's mind, then your marketing material is more spot on. So that wrap things on my side. So I'm sure there are some questions.
There are some questions, and that was fantastic. We've got a couple minutes here to give us some time to chew through those questions. So the first one is actually two questions from different attendees, but related to the same topic about how you had that alignment with sales in determining attribution. So the first question is, why did you even ask sales? Couldn't you just measure based on, winning the company soon after they attended the event, rather than asking sales for their opinion at all? And then the kind of follow-up additional question is, obviously you did decide to ask them, and when you did, how did you gauge the influence of the seminar on the purchase? Did you have a sort of weighting factor to account for the influence and how much it tied to the final revenue, right? If the salesperson said, well, I think it kind of helped versus, oh, it made all of the difference. How did you account for that? So kind of two-part question.
Yeah, sure. So, to the second one, well, we only counted when the salesperson mentioned that it had a relatively big influence. If they said, yes, maybe, I'm not sure, obviously that didn't count. We wanted to make sure we tracked when it had a major influence. So it was key. And then also to the first question about, why not just look at the sales we achieved and why ask salespeople? It's because in our case, we were targeting relatively large companies. So it might be different for other types of products if you're selling to B2B, but relatively smaller companies. In our case, when there could be 10 or 15 different sales opportunity for one single company, and we had to discriminate because for some one opportunities, the seminar had absolutely no influence at all. In some other cases, it did have an influence. So it's because of our context, but I can understand that in some other setups, it might not make sense to ask salespeople.
And what about, did you have any issues with your relationship with the sales team? Did you have any kind of biased data coming from sales, do you think, or was that not an issue for you?
No, the relationship was pretty good. I don't think that that it was biased. Salespeople were really happy with it, and they were asking us to organize more of those events. One thing I didn't mention was that it does help at the very beginning, maybe to choose a friendly salesperson. So to hold your first event, if you have access to lots of different persons, try pitching your idea to a couple of salespeople and see which one is more enthusiastic about it. And then to prove your concept before going to the person who's a bit more reluctant to participate in your project.
Smart. You go for the easy win first, right?
Yes, exactly.
There's a couple kind of quick clarifying questions. The first one is, were these seminars paid events? And if so, how did you handle the pricing?
No, the events were totally free. We wanted to attract as many people as possible. You could have those payable, but in our case, since we were able to demonstrate a good ROI already with the first event, it was a no-brainer after that. We thought, if we attract more people, yes, we're spending maybe, I don't know, $100 to $150 per person per day, but the payback is there. So yeah, it was a huge.
Yeah. And when you were calculating your ROI, was the employee time and travel accounted in that total cost of the events?
Yeah, those are the direct costs. So really, booking like the food, booking the hotel room, etc. We can take into account salaries, etc., which would have increased a little bit the cost of the event, but still the payback would have been pretty good. Also, it was good because salespeople, if some of those told me, just in the coffee breaks, they can talk to all of their customers in a single day, while if they were traveling, they would visit maybe one or two customers a day. And, in those events, everybody's there. So they come in early, they leave late, and they're able to see so many customers in a single location. So that was, worth their time as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Another one about the relationship with sales, which has become a really hot topic. You've got such great knowledge to share about it. So there's someone here who might be similar to you, has really long sales cycles, right? Which is common when you're, selling really large packages, large products to big companies. So with a really long sales cycle, how soon after the event do you suggest that you follow up with the sales team to determine the influence, right? Because if the sales cycle is so long, it makes it harder to place.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. It really depends how long is your sales cycle. And in my case, I reached out to sale only when I saw that a particular opportunity was closed. So I had an actual reason to reach out to them. So if you don't see any opportunities closing, you might wait a little longer. So each situation is unique. Obviously, if you wait too long, 9 months, it becomes too long. But after I'd wait maybe a couple of months, even if your sales cycle are really long, a year or so, after a few months, you'll know if there was an impact or not, because your sales team will probably have been in touch with the people who have attended your events, so you'll know relatively quickly if it played favorably or not.
Yep, makes sense. All right, last question for you. For customer education tactics, obviously we can't do events right now. What do you think about investing in video creation for customer education? Does it add value to B2B customers?
Sure.
Videos explaining the product, how to use it, benefits, etc. What are your thoughts on video?
Videos can be great as well. Short ones or longer ones. Obviously, we're all virtual until the pandemic ends. So videos are good. What I would advise is, using some of the tips I have given here. So focusing on the application, not your product. So demos, yes, make sense. But if all of your videos are about your product and will work great, and etc. But sometimes just explaining basic concept that relate to your industry, you might get favorable positioning in SEO if whatever you're selling, just explaining, I don't know, I've used the example of a CRM earlier. Well, your video could be about what is a CRM, and it's not even a demo of your product, but it's just explaining a type of product category. So you could use these concepts with video. So yeah, definitely it can be part of a successful marketing strategy.
Awesome. Wonderful. If you will pop to the next slide, I will share with folks before we wrap up here. Something that's super exciting on our end of things is that Pragmatic has a new course, which is the first time in many years that we've had a new course. And so a lot of love and attention has gone into this one. It's really designed specifically, see what I did there? Designed specifically for product professionals in having really strong relationships with their design team. So really kind of making sure that you are understanding the entire customer experience. Really a lot of what we've talked about here today takes these factors into account, really having strong personas and understanding what that experience is from the customer's point of view. So wanted to share that before we wrap up. But of course, Jean-Sébastien, thank you so much. This was a total blast to talk to you. I learned a ton. If you have additional questions that we didn't get around to, and you're an alumni of Pragmatic, I encourage you to come into the Pragmatic alumni community. You can send an email to community@pragmaticinstitute.com if you don't have an account yet. But if you're already a member, of course, Jean-Sébastien is a fantastic pack member and hangs out with us in there all the time. So you can ask him questions in the pack. And again, thank you so much for the time. This was really fantastic.
Pleasure, and thanks everyone for being there.
Yeah, thank you. All right, folks, you will all get a follow-up email with a recording of this presentation if you want to go back and kind of tease out some of the awesome takeaways that were in here. But other than that, until next time, lovely to see everybody as always, and we will catch you on the next one. Thank you again.